The rain was coming down in sheets as I stared out the window of my small apartment in Seattle. I'm Kendrick, 44, a software developer, and tonight, my life felt like a debugging nightmare with no solution in sight. My wife, Meredith, was supposed to be at a conference in Chicago, a marketing summit she'd been preparing for months, but something felt off. It wasn't one big thing, but a series of small inconsistencies that had been gnawing at me for weeks. Late nights at the office, hushed phone calls she'd quickly end when I entered the room, a new perfume I'd never smelled before. I tried to dismiss it as paranoia, the product of a stressful job and too much coffee. But the feeling persisted, a knot tightening in my stomach with each passing day. I decided to surprise her. A romantic gesture, I thought, to show her how much I appreciated her hard work. I booked a last-minute flight to Chicago, excited to see her reaction. I imagined us having a wonderful dinner, maybe catching a show, a chance to reconnect amidst the chaos of our busy lives. When I arrived at the hotel where she was supposed to be staying, the receptionist gave me a polite but confused look. "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have anyone registered under that name." My heart skipped a beat. "There must be some mistake," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Meredith Sinclair, she's with the marketing summit." The receptionist typed away at her computer. "No, sir, I've checked the attendee list as well. There's no Meredith Sinclair registered with the summit either." A cold dread washed over me. I thanked the receptionist and stumbled out of the hotel, the rain now mirroring the storm brewing inside me. I pulled out my phone and called Meredith. It went straight to voicemail. "Hey, it's me," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just wanted to see how the conference is going. Call me when you get a chance." I knew something was terribly wrong. I spent the next few hours wandering the streets of Chicago, lost in a fog of confusion and disbelief. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played, that the woman I loved, the woman I had built a life with, was lying to me. Back at my hotel, I decided to check our bank statements online. It was a violation of trust, I knew, but I felt like I had no other choice. What I found made my blood run cold. There were several charges for expensive dinners, jewelry, and a stay at a luxury spa, all in Chicago, all within the last few days. The receipts were under Meredith's name, but the most damning evidence was a charge for a hotel room at a different hotel, one far more exclusive than the one she was supposedly staying at for the conference. A hotel known for its romantic suites and discretion. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. The air was thick, and I struggled to breathe. My hands trembled as I copied the address of the hotel and booked a taxi. I had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. When I arrived at the hotel, I took a deep breath and walked up to the front desk. "I'm looking for Meredith Sinclair," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "She's staying here with—" I hesitated, the word husband catching in my throat. "With a guest." The receptionist smiled politely. "Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson are in Suite 302, Thompson." That wasn't my name. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I thanked the receptionist and made my way to the elevators, my legs feeling like lead. As I stood outside Suite 302, I could hear muffled voices inside. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorbell. Part of me wanted to turn around, to run away and pretend none of this was happening. But I couldn't. I had to know. I rang the doorbell. The voices stopped abruptly. After a moment, the door opened. Meredith stood there, her eyes wide with shock. She was wearing a silk robe, her hair slightly disheveled. Behind her, standing in the doorway of the bedroom, was a man I recognized instantly. It was Gavin, her boss. The man I had met at company picnics, the man I had considered a friend. "Kendrick," Meredith stammered, her face paling. "What are you doing here?" I didn't say anything. I just stared at her, at Gavin, at the scene in front of me. The truth was laid bare, ugly and undeniable. I came to surprise you," I finally managed to say, my voice cracking. "I wanted to see how the conference was going." Meredith's eyes darted back and forth between me and Gavin, her face a mask of panic. "This isn't what it looks like," she said, her voice trembling. "It's not?" I asked, my voice laced with sarcasm. "Then please enlighten me. What exactly is it?" Gavin stepped forward, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Look, Kendrick, this is complicated," he said. "Complicated?" I repeated, my anger starting to boil over. You're sleeping with my wife in a hotel room you paid for with company funds and you call it complicated. I took a step towards him, my fists clenched. I ought to. Meredith stepped between us, her hands outstretched. Kendrick, please just listen, she pleaded. Let me explain. Explain, I scoffed. What's there to explain? I caught you red-handed. You lied to me, you betrayed me, you humiliated me. And you expect me to listen to your excuses. I looked at Meredith, at the woman I had loved with all my heart, and I saw a stranger. A woman who was capable of such deceit, such cruelty. The pain was unbearable, a searing ache that ripped through my soul. I'm done, I said, my voice flat. I'm done with you, I'm done with this marriage, I want a divorce. Meredith burst into tears. Kendrick, please don't do this, she sobbed. I'm so sorry, it was a mistake, I don't want to lose you. You should have thought about that before you decided to sleep with your boss, I said, my voice cold. I turned and walked out of the hotel room, leaving Meredith and Gavin standing there, their faces etched with guilt and shame. As I rode back to my hotel, the rain continued to fall, washing away the last vestiges of my illusions. My marriage was over, my heart was broken, and my life had been irrevocably changed. The next few months were a blur. The divorce was messy and acrimonious. Meredith tried to paint me as controlling and emotionally abusive, hoping to gain the upper hand in the settlement. But I had evidence of her affair, evidence of her misuse of company funds, and I wasn't afraid to use it. In the end, she got nothing. I walked away with my dignity intact, but my heart was still heavy with grief and betrayal. I threw myself into my work, spending long hours coding and debugging, trying to distract myself from the pain. But it was no use. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of Meredith, of our life together, of the dreams we had shared. One evening, as I was working late, I received an email from an unknown address. It was a single sentence. You're not the only one he's done this to. Attached was a file. I hesitated for a moment, then clicked on it. It was a series of emails, text messages, and photographs, all documenting Gavin's affairs with other women. It turned out that Meredith wasn't the first and probably wouldn't be the last. Gavin had a pattern of preying on vulnerable women, using his position of power to manipulate and exploit them. I felt a surge of anger, not just at Gavin, but at myself for being so blind, so trusting. I forwarded the file to the HR department at Meredith's company, along with a detailed account of Gavin's behavior. A week later, I received a call from a company lawyer. Gavin had been fired. Meredith had been demoted and placed on probation. Justice of sorts had been served. But it didn't bring me any satisfaction, no sense of closure. The pain was still there, a dull ache that wouldn't go away. Time, they say, heals all wounds, but I wasn't so sure. I started seeing a therapist, trying to work through the trauma of the betrayal. It was a slow and painful process, but gradually I began to heal. I started exercising, eating healthy, and reconnecting with old friends. I even tried dating, but it was difficult to trust anyone again. The fear of being hurt, of being betrayed, was always there, lurking beneath the surface. One day, as I was walking through a park, I saw a woman sitting on a bench reading a book. She had kind eyes and a warm smile. Her name was Willow. We struck up a conversation, and I found myself drawn to her honesty and her gentle spirit. We started spending time together, going for walks, having coffee, sharing our stories. I told her about Meredith, about the affair, about the pain and the betrayal. She listened without judgment, offering me comfort and support. Slowly, cautiously, I began to open my heart to her. Willow was different from Meredith. She was genuine, compassionate, and trustworthy. She didn't play games or try to manipulate me. She was simply herself, and that was enough. We fell in love, slowly and organically, building a relationship based on mutual respect and understanding. It wasn't easy. The scars of the past were still there, but with Willow's help, I was able to overcome my fears and embrace the possibility of happiless again. A year later, we got married. It was a small, intimate ceremony, surrounded by our closest friends and family. As I stood at the altar holding Willow's hand, I knew that I had finally found peace. I had survived the betrayal, I had healed my heart, and I had found love again. The rain had stopped and the sun was shining. Life, it seemed, had a way of surprising you, of offering you a second chance even when you least expected it. Looking back, I don't regret what happened with Meredith. It was a painful chapter in my life, but it taught me valuable lessons about trust, forgiveness, and the resilience of the human spirit. It also led me to Willow, the woman who showed me that love is still possible, even after the deepest betrayal. And for that, I am grateful. I learned that sometimes, the worst things that happen to us can lead us to the best things in our lives. It's a lesson I'll never forget.